Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another Axel 72 video, and in today's video I'm going to be giving my prediction for the Merab Dvalishvili versus Sean O'Malley rematch. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so, like the video if you do indeed like the video, and let's get straight into this. So this is, like I say, the rematch of what was quite a close, to be fair, well contested first fight between the two of them. And I mean, most of Merab's fights, especially at the highest of levels, since being champion, have been relatively close. I mean, he's only beaten O'Malley and then beaten Nurmagomedov, and they both have been relatively close fights. I feel like a lot of people were saying that Dvalishvili clearly kind of won against O'Malley and was, going not really leaning towards O'Malley for this one, and saying that he doesn't really have as much of a chance and things like that. And everybody's just expecting Dvalishvili to be able to win. And, that's just the way that I'm seeing it. But I think this definitely has the makings to still be a really exciting, entertaining clash. Obviously, like I say, Merab's coming off a really well-contested fight versus Nurmagomedov, where I think he looked amazing, to be completely honest. I think it's just his cardio was just insane, and he did what basically no other fighter has ever been able to do, which is beating Nurmagomedov. Yes, Umar had not had the same kind of level of experience as to that of a Habib or even somebody as a Usman Nurmagomedov, but still, he was the person to end the Nurmagomedov run of wins, and he did it just by purely just cardio. And to be fair, he also showcased really good takedown defense and wasn't really getting hurt too much, to be completely honest, in that contest. He broke St. Pierre's record of takedowns when Nurmagomedov hadn't even been taken down, I believe, once in his UFC career since then. Obviously, he'd not had many fights in the UFC, but still, that's really, really impressive. And like I say, the fact he was able to show good takedown defense is something in which we haven't really had to see too much against Merab. We'd seen him being able to deal with strikers, and, we've seen him being able to just really impose himself, but we've not seen him up against a wrestler who perhaps is a more skilled wrestler than that of Merab. Perhaps he can offer a more creative selection of submission attempts, and perhaps he is better in that element, but it's just the pure cardio and the ability to just non-stop keep being able to keep coming forwards and being able to deal with whatever his opponent was offering was just amazing, to be completely honest. And talk about being a 5-round fighter. Merab is that full package into the into the final round, and it's so impressive to see. He's now on a 12-fight win streak. If he gets into a 13-fight win streak, he's on. He's in amongst a group of great names, including, the likes of Anderson Silva, I believe John Jones as well in the UFC. I might be wrong, but just some great names that have gotten to a 13-fight win streak, and Merab will be joining that. And obviously, it is interesting to see that he didn't want to go straight for a instant rematch with Umar, because yes, this fight versus O'Malley was close, but arguably that Umar fight was even closer, to be completely honest, and maybe was an even better fight, even though the first fight between O'Malley and him was good. But instead he chose this O'Malley route. O'Malley has perhaps changed his mindset coming into this fight. When he lost, you could tell that it really did have a big effect on him. He was riding a massive high throughout his whole career. He'd been able to get some great moments. I mean, of course, he got the belt by knocking out Sterling, and then he went to go on and he beats Vera in the defense, and then he went on to go fight Dvalishvili, and he just couldn't handle Dvalishvili, and he got close to actually being able to, perhaps knock him out or at least cause some damage to him when he did hurt him to the body in the 5th and final round in their first fight, but it just wasn't enough. O'Malley still did well to be able to stuff a lot of takedowns from Merab, but inevitably Merab was still getting the takedowns. He was still doing enough, and like I say, he's just again giving O'Malley an opportunity, whereas O'Malley hasn't fought, of course, since the loss versus Dvalishvili. He said he wanted to have some time out. He has had some time out, and we're now seeing him back. It's, to be honest, not a surprise that he's only realistically returned for a rematch. I think he didn't want to risk going up against a top contender like an Umar like a Nurmagomedov when that is a risky fight for him. It's again a stylistic matchup that doesn't go in his favour, and there's not really much reward if he was to have beaten Nurmagomedov. Well, it was a risky fight, let's just put it that way. And so I think it's not surprising that he was waiting for this rematch to come about. I feel like coming into this one, though, there is less animosity between the two of them. In the lead up to the first fight, it seems like there was that bit of a rivalry there. I mean, Merab was making loads of funny videos. He stole the jacket when he faced off with Sterling and jumped up on the cage. That was a highlight moment for Merab, and that's what really got the fans on his side. And now, they were seen in the jacuzzi together not that long ago, Merab and O'Malley. It seems like O'Malley doesn't seem to mind Merab, and I think fans are starting to really like Merab as well. And even though he has this strong wrestling style, which fighters such as Bilal have, he doesn't get that kind of negative fan recognition which the likes of Bilal does have because of his style. Fans are starting to like Merab's style because he makes it entertaining. Like, he'll grab you and pick you up and walk with you across the cage like he did versus Cejudo, or he'll start trying to kiss you on the back like he did versus O'Malley, or just a little bit of showboating. Obviously you don't want to do anything risky when you're doing that, and it can cause problems, but he's a confident fighter, and I think that's again something which really benefits Merab. And obviously O'Malley, since the loss, seemingly has changed his mindset. He's not been doing stuff, and he's kind of, like I say, become a bit more relaxed. I don't know if that's the right way of putting it. I don't know if he's perhaps losing his spark, or he hasn't got the same self-confidence or belief. I don't know if the same kind of level of, not ego, but the way that he was strutting about was a confident style. I don't know if that's still going to be there coming into this fight. He's maybe becoming more dangerous. Maybe he's more locked in than ever. He's bringing back the cornroads, and perhaps he will be more, like I say, more confident than ever. But it will be definitely intriguing to see what type of version of O'Malley we do get for this fight, because I feel like fans know what to expect from Dvalishvili, but for this one, fans might see something a little bit different from Sean. But yeah, obviously this is amongst a great month for the UFC after a bit of a weak time for the UFC in recent times. I mean, just last week, of course, we had the Barber Blanchfield fight fall through in the last minute of a fight night that fans weren't really too excited for. And then before that, there was no UFC. So it's been a little bit of a rocky time for a UFC fan as of recent. But this month is really kind of bringing it back out again, I suppose is the best way of saying it. We start off with this. Next week, we've got Usman versus Buckley, and, so on and so forth. We've got Jamal Hill versus Roundtree as a fight. There is some really good fights. We've got Topuria versus Oliveira coming up soon. There is some really good fights in the pipeline for the UFC. And this card for UFC 316, it is a really good card. I think it has got some really good fights on it. I mean, we're seeing Kelvin Gastelum versus Joe Pyfer, which was meant to be, I believe, on a fight night a little while ago, but obviously it fell through. But now we have it again, and I think that's a really exciting matchup between two unranked guys, but two, like I say, still exciting fighters nonetheless. If Gastelum can make weight, that'll be interesting to see. Bautista versus Patchy Mix is another very exciting contest, but for a different reason. Patchy Mix is one of the newest names in which have just signed with the UFC from Bellator. Of course, PFL taking over Bellator. They've let go of some noticeable names. Obviously, the last big one was Patricio Pitbull, and he came to the UFC and, of course, didn't make quite the impact in which fans were expecting. And I'm sure we probably will see him in a UFC fight again soon. But now Patchy Mix has his turn to, live up to the hype in which he got in the PFL/Bellator, and now he's up against Mario Bautista, which is arguably an easier contest than Yair Rodriguez for Patricio Pitbull. But Patchy Mix is a really good wrestler. He's a very strong guy. He can get you to the ground impressively, and again has a high work rate, and arguably has the skills to really contend with the likes of a Dvalishvili stylistic wise. I think that is a good matchup. But for Mario Bautista, I think Bautista perhaps is a bit more versatile of a fighter, but maybe not got one strength as good as Patchy Mix. So I'm not going to give a prediction for it, but I think it is a really exciting fight, and I'm very interested to see what Patchy has to offer coming into the UFC. And if, yet again, if it's going to be another case of the Bellator fighters kind of being overhyped and kind of, just not being able to fight at the same level of any UFC competition. I think it's going to be another interesting fight. And then also Vicente Luque versus Kevin Holland, I think is another very good contest as well. Holland's coming off a victory versus Gunnar Nelson, which was a pretty decent victory for him. Nelson coming off a good amount of time off, so, not a huge name, but now he's in against a ranked guy in Luque, and I think in the welterweight division, Holland can be a problem. Can he beat a ranked guy? We'll have to wait and see. It is surprising to see that he is getting a ranked matchup straight away after one win, but inevitably, like I say, I think it is going to still make for a good fight. But to give my prediction for the main event, I'll give my prediction for the co-main in just a moment. But like I say, for the main event, UFC bantamweight title on the line, I think that Merab Dvalishvili is going to be able to win yet again via unanimous decision. I believe that it will be, like I say, interesting to see what version of O'Malley comes into this fight, if he's going to have really improved his ground game again. Like I say, he was stuffing takedowns and still having success, but he wasn't going to the ground himself. I feel like inevitably he just did tire a bit as well. He couldn't get his timing going from what we've normally seen from O'Malley. His timing typically is excellent, but he just couldn't seem to time Dvalishvili the same way. Perhaps he could hurt him to the body. Maybe he'll go there straight away like he did in the first fight. Maybe that could be a route for him to be able to get some sort of stoppage against Dvalishvili. But I again believe that Dvalishvili is going to just continuously keep coming forwards, even if he doesn't get the takedowns go his way. Perhaps he might get caught with the odd shots if he's getting too comfortable, or if he's showboating, or if he goes for a takedown that's just a bit of a wasteful takedown. We will have to wait and see if that happens, but I still believe that Dvalishvili, like I say, will be able to outwork Sean O'Malley. Stylistic-wise, I just don't think it is a good matchup, and I don't think it ever will be for Sean O'Malley. And again, like I say, I think Dvalishvili will be able to win. And then who he can go on to fight next, Dvalishvili going on to that 13-fight win streak, if he gets it, he has the full kind of right to go on to try and become a two-weight UFC champion, or at the moment then that's not happening with any fighter, but go on to try and contend against one of the other top guys, because realistically he has kind of beaten everybody. He beat Jan in a close fight, that was another close fight to Dvalishvili. But he could perhaps rematch him again. He could rematch Nurmagomedov again, write these close fights to make them more a convincing victory. He could fight the winner of Bautista versus Mix if Mix puts on an exciting performance. Maybe that could happen. Again, like I said, I think that could be a good stylistic matchup if Mix is all that we are panning him out to be. But at the same time, he could, he has, like I say, full right to go on to perhaps go down and fight Pantoja. I think that could be an excellent matchup, or go up to fight Volk, but I just don't know if Merab actually really wants to do that or not. So it's completely, of course, up to him, but I wouldn't blame him. And it's just interesting to see that it hasn't really been much talk at all of him going into the other weight divisions, even though he has been arguably one of the most dominant champions in the UFC at the moment. But to give my thoughts on the co-main event, it's a really exciting women's matchup between Julianna Peña and Kayla Harrison for, of course, the women's UFC bantamweight title. Kayla Harrison, since coming into the UFC, has been a really exciting name. She's been really hyped up, and so far she's lived up to the expectation. She's had a really good win versus Holly Holm in her first fight. Then she went on to fight Vieira, which was a bit more of a difficult contest. She blamed, I think, some sort of injuries and stuff as to why she wasn't at her best. But, she had to deal with a high level of competition there, and she was still able to do it. Arguably, she has been the best PFL signing coming to the UFC since nobody realistically, I believe she could be up there with the best so far, and if she wins this world title, then arguably she is. I think she's got a good level of rivalry and a good level of hype built for this fight versus Peña. Obviously, Peña is, in my opinion, being written off for this fight. I think there is so much hype behind Harrison and expectation behind her that people are forgetting that Peña is a really good fighter. She obviously beat Amanda Nunes when Nunes was on such a high, and she dropped it. She was able to get a submission against her, and it was a really dramatic, exciting performance which fans really didn't expect. Obviously she went on to lose the rematch, but then she went in the last fight and beat Raquel Pennington really well, where she was just dominating on the ground and having a lot of success there. She has really good wrestling ability with a good striking and maybe more complete of a fighter than that of Harrison, who of course is known for her strength and her wrestling ability, and also on the same time Harrison does have to drain a lot to be able to make the bantamweight limit, and it's no fault of her own that she has to fight at this weight division because there isn't really any other weight divisions higher than that for the UFC women's kind of side of things, and so she has to drain herself a lot to be able to make the weight, so it is difficult for her. Obviously she's used to doing that, but at a world title level, she hasn't had to go the 5-round distance from what I believe just yet, so it could be difficult if it goes into the later rounds for her. For who I think she's going to be able to win, I think it's going to be a really good wrestling matchup between, like I say, two really high-skilled wrestlers. I think that Kayla Harrison is going to be able to win via submission in round 3. I do think her strength is going to be the more superior. I think Harrison perhaps could cause some problems when she is throwing to Peña, because I don't think Peña's actual striking defense is that good. I think she does look a bit flustered when she does get caught with shots, and that's when Pennington was able to have the most amount of success versus Peña. I think Harrison, if she does get her to the ground, can land some good ground and pound as well, and inevitably, like I say, will be able to catch her in a submission to be able to, like I say, win via submission in round 3. Who she can go on to fight next, though, is an interesting one. There isn't loads of great names in the bantamweight division excitement-wise at the moment. I mean, Dumont and Perez are two names in which are interesting names. I suppose they're on good fight winning streaks. I mean, Perez is getting her hype for her own reasons of what she's doing after fights, but she's on actually a really good fight win streak, and she is actually looking really good as a wrestler, so that could work. If not, a dream fight, if Kayla Harrison does look really good against Peña and gets a really good win, would be Amanda Nunes coming out of retirement. Perhaps that could happen. I mean, in a press conference not too long ago, perhaps it was even hyping up the Peña versus Harrison fight, they panned to Nunes and it was such a good crowd reaction, and you can see the fans actually really want to see Amanda Nunes back because they're relying on a fighter like Kayla Harrison to be this new exciting name, but I just don't know if she has the same level of hype behind her as what Nunes has, and the Brazilian fans love Amanda Nunes, and that could make for an excellent matchup. I still believe there is more to see from Amanda Nunes. Obviously she's retired, but it's always been rumoured that she might come out of retirement, and I would love to see that fight between her and Kayla Harrison. Maybe Kayla Harrison, like I say, might want to take one title defence before a big name like that, but inevitably I think that could maybe main event a pay-per-view in itself. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you did, like the video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.